Watch out, it's a live mic.
This is Mark McNeese in New York City, and you're listening to another edition of the Live Mic Podcast. Welcome to the podcast. This is Mark on a rainy, gloomy, dark New York City night. Perfect time to interview an author of murder mysteries. His name is Marshall Thornton. He's my guest tonight. He's a novelist, playwright, and screenwriter. He's best known for the Boystown detective series, which received 2 honorable mentions and a runner-up in the Rainbow Awards, and has been a finalist for the Lambda Literary Award in the gay mystery category 3 times. His other novels include the erotic comedy The Perils of Praline, or the Amorous Adventures of a Southern Gentleman in Hollywood, The Ghost Slept Over, and others. He's also had plays produced both in Chicago and LA, and stories published in the James White Review and Frontier Magazine. His work can be found at numerous outlets online, including Amazon's Kindle store, of course, FictionWise, Kobo, and Barnes & Noble. And you can check him out online at marshallthornton.wordpress.com. So, Marshall, how are you?
I'm pretty good.
Thank you for coming on and talking about, well, we will talk about your writing and your life and all of that stuff. Because you also did a written interview with me, which I really appreciated.
That's right.
And I know that you mentioned in that you started out writing spec scripts in Los Angeles, and then you moved into...
Yeah, that's kind of true, but kind of not. I started out writing plays when I was 19.
Oh, okay.
And I was a theater person for about 12 years, I guess, and studied theater at the University of Louisville, and then moved up to Chicago, where I studied theater and directed plays, and had some staged readings at Victory Gardens, and I studied at Steppenwolf and did things like that. And I started a small theater with a bunch of other people called Stage Left, which is still in Chicago in some form, but not what it was originally.
Mm-hmm.
And then I switched over to writing spec scripts after that.
Well, that's an evolution. I was in the theater out in Los Angeles. There was a theater company called Friends and Artists Theater Ensemble. And I wrote plays for about 10 years. That's all I did was write plays. But then in 2002, the last one was produced in New Jersey, and I just decided that I don't really like collaboration. I prefer to just create with a keyboard and myself, and no artistic directors or readings or any of that stuff. So I went back to writing fiction. Now, how did you can you just talk a little bit about how you ended up writing mysteries?
Well, let's see. So I wrote spec scripts for a while. And actually in there, I also got a BA in creative writing from Cal State Long Beach. Mm-hmm. And I did write fiction during that period, although it was pretty terrible. And then I wrote spec scripts and went to the University of California Film School, UCLA, where I studied screenwriting for 3 years. I came out of there, I had an attachment on one of my scripts, and it just went pretty badly. And collaboration, you're right, it's really challenging, and it's even harder in film than it is in the theater, I think, because in the theater they at least respect your words once you're finished with the play.
Yeah.
But in Hollywood, they don't buy your work. They just want you to keep writing it. And I wrote 5 drafts of a script in 6 months for no pay. And finally kind of just called it off because, they never purchased it. So I was the owner, so I got to fire everybody.
Yeah.
It's really fun firing famous people. That's like my big thing coming out of school. So after that, I was kind of like fishing around looking for what to do. And that's when I wrote a couple of short stories trying to get them into Ellery Queen. And then I was looking around for other things to do, and there was a call for gay, erotic Christmas stories. And I thought that was very unique and something I had to try. And that was for Queer Press. I don't know if I say their name correctly. And later on, I found out that it's really not unique at all. It's very common in that genre and those publishers, but it was new to me. So I wrote a story and got it published. And then I wanted to do some more, and that was the point where I started writing the Boystown stories. I was also at the same time reading a lot of James Lear, who I like quite a lot. And his books, you know, he kind of took Agatha Christie and added some sex scenes and made it gay. And those are very, very fun and very interesting. And so I kind of decided to do something similar with a different kind of mystery. Originally, I was going to put the stories out as standalones, but that was taking a long time. So the publisher, Queer Press, said, well, let's just put them together. And so that's how the first Boystown book happened, was we put the first 3 stories together.
And what was the inspiration for him, for Nick Nowak?
You know, I'm a huge fan of Sue Grafton. I love her books. I like the way that she follows the minutiae of her character's life, and I liked that. I also like the idea of having a gay detective who was kind of in the Mike Hammer mold.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I thought that was an interesting contrast, if that's who he thought he was supposed to be. And certainly, you know, when I designed the character and gave him a background in a police family, you know, that kind of solidified the idea that, you know, his ideas about masculinity are very mainstream, while at the same time he's not what his family would call masculine because he's gay.
Yeah.
You know, and so
why the 1980s?
I guess, you know, they say write what you know. And certainly I'm not a detective. So one of the things I've learned is, you know, you don't restrict yourself to the things you know.
Mm-hmm. But
you should have something in there that is familiar to you. And I lived in Chicago from 1980 to 1987. And that's the period I'm writing about. And so a lot of what's in the stories is actually things that I experienced.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know how much I thought about these things at the beginning, but one of the things I've come to realize about mystery is that it gives you an opportunity to write about whatever you want to write about, as long as you have the plot.
Yeah.
You know, it's like you can do things that you wouldn't necessarily be able to interest people in without the mystery. It's really been a great opportunity, I think, to collect real stories of people's lives that I encountered, and to sort of collect what I remember, you know, which probably wouldn't have a whole lot of interest if I'd just done that on its own.
Mm-hmm. Now, you've written other things, too. You wrote Desert Run, My Favorite Uncle, and you recently put out Death Comes to Happy Acres.
I did.
Under the name J.T. Moss.
Yes.
How's that going?
It's going well. There's going to be a promotion next month, the 99-cent promotion on the 5th of November. And it's also, it's in the process of becoming an audiobook.
Oh, nice. So,
you know, it's challenging to start a new brand, definitely.
I'm sure, because I've thought about it, just because I'm adopted and I have a birth name that I've always wanted to use. That's the only reason I would do it, unless I was going to started to write something that was just like wildly different. But anyways, I was curious because you have a brand, you have a name, you're on Amazon, you can click on, your name under the book. But then when you do a pseudonym like that, do you have to create an author's persona, or do you just not worry about that?
I'm not really doing a persona thing. The bio I wrote for J.T. Moss is pretty much the same as my current bio. I just don't mention the other books. I'm really looking at it as more of an organizing principle.
Mm-hmm.
I think a lot of my fans aren't really interested in mainstream stuff.
Yeah.
And certainly a lot of people who like to read mainstream books are not especially interested in gay mystery.
Yeah.
So it's a way to separate things for people who who aren't really that interested in. Now,
Sure.
Certainly, fans that really like my work, will cross over and read from both sides. And that's cool, But so I'm not really it's very transparent, obviously, since you're asking about it. And I'm not really trying to be someone else. It's just a matter of these books are going to be over here, and these books are going to be over here.
Well, yeah, and plenty of authors have done that.
Yeah.
I just was always curious about how it actually kind of worked. But now you have a lot of fans for the Boystown books. And was that... I guess you can't expect it, but how has that been? Since you started, were you surprised? Are you really happy to have a bunch of fans?
Well, it takes a little getting used to. It's an odd relationship.
Yeah.
Because people, they feel like they know things about you, and they do, actually. But you don't really know anything about them. So, that's been very interesting. To kind of meet people and they're starting 2 steps ahead of you. Or they have different ideas about you than are necessarily real.
Mm-hmm.
And certainly, it's writing a series has been a really great experience, and I've certainly really enjoyed it. And, it's nice that it continues to grow. It's nice that I'm selling more of the first book than I did the first few years it was out.
Mm-hmm.
So that's very gratifying. And I actually, I kind of just love series.
Oh, I do too. They're my favorite. I really didn't know anything about gay mysteries when I started pursuing them. But I've read like John Sanford or Michael Connelly, John Connelly. I've been reading their series for years, and I've always liked the fact that Harry Bosch is getting old. It's getting old with me. It's kind of like,
Yes.
I started when I was in my 30s reading about this guy, and he's in his, I think he's like 60 or something. But anyways, that's one thing I really like about series. You get to know the characters, and they sort of feel like family in an odd way.
Yeah. I read Michael Connelly. I didn't start until a couple of years ago, and I read them all in about a 6-month period.
I really like his stuff. Now, I wanted to ask you also, and then sort of wind down, promoting yourself, because I imagine some writers will listen because you're an author. How have you found the whole experience of having to promote yourself and market yourself?
Well, I actually worked in marketing at Sony Pictures during the 90s, and that experience is pretty useless. It's a really challenging thing. The keys to marketing books, I think, are you have to have a really great cover. You have to have a really good blurb. And you have to have written a decent book. to deliver. So those are key. They don't get you started off, but they will keep you going. Social media, what I tell people is, you can't do it all. There's so much of it. So, do what appeals to you. I like Facebook, and that's where I do most of my social media. Because I can't, there's no way you cover all bases. And a lot of it's like, there's a point where it becomes counterproductive, I think. Because people don't want to hear from you too much.
Well, that's true. And sometimes I think some of the things that I'd like to talk about were probably better off spoken offline, because I don't want to say the wrong thing. I don't want to step on anybody's toes. But I'm not a self-promoter. I mean, first of all, I've got 100 and some odd friends on Facebook. How many times are they going to buy my book? So I'm not going to just keep telling them, my book's what, what I'm talking about? And sometimes that gets to me, because it just seems like, I don't know, just the constant self-promotion. It's not me. I'm not comfortable with it. And you're absolutely right. I don't want to see it all the time.
Yeah, I mean, you really have to have something to say.
So, anyways, I think I'm coming up to an end here.
Okay.
But it's, I wanted to talk to you. I really liked your answers, the written answers. And you are very well known. Like I said, when I said, and the thing is, I wasn't trying, this was never a career decision for me. It wasn't like, okay, I'm going to try to figure out what I can write that people are going to buy and I can make some money. I wrote the first book of my series because I just wanted the challenge. I just wanted to do it. And when I was looking around at who else writes these things, your name was there, Josh Lanyon, and a few others, David Lennon. And so a friend of mine loves your books. And he's
cool.
I moved to New York with him in '93. And anyways, I've sort of lost my train of thought there. But you're successful in this genre. You're well known in the genre. And it was good to really get your perspective on things and talk to you finally, because I see you on Facebook, and you've been nominated a few times for as a finalist to Lambda Literary Award.
3 times.
3 times. Did you come to New York each time?
I did.
You were there this time, I think, because I was there for this anthology that I edited and published.
Yeah. I think I saw you from across the crowded room.
Oh yeah, the one person I saw was David Swadling. He's a really nice guy too.
Oh yeah, I saw him. I was hanging out with Ray Hayes.
Yes, yeah, that's what I heard.
Awesome.
But no, it's really good to talk to you. And I know you're doing the 8th book, Boystown 8.
I am editing it right now.
Very good, and great success with that and with everything else you're doing. And you've got your an Italian edition of which one?
Oh, The Ghost Slept Over.
Oh, The Ghost Slept Over. Okay.
Yes.
Well, thanks a lot for talking to me, and I'll send you the link to this tomorrow.
Alrighty.
It was very good, and best of luck with everything.
Good to talk to you.
Yep, keep satisfying your fans and inspiring other writers like me.
I will try.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Thank you.
Bye.